The sky over New Chicago was a dull, smoky gray, streaked with the faint glow of fires that refused to die. Buildings that had once reached proudly toward the heavens now lay twisted and broken, their steel skeletons jutting into the clouds like the bones of some ancient, forgotten creature. The streets below were quiet, empty, except for the occasional scavenger moving quickly, carefully, as if the very air could betray their presence. Captain Mara then moved through the ruins with a careful step, her boots crunching on shards of glass and rubble. She was alone, but that solitude had become a habit, a shield against the chaos of the world that had grown louder with each passing day. She paused in the shadow of a collapsed skyscraper, scanning the horizon. There was a strange stillness tonight, a silence that felt heavier than the ordinary emptiness. Mara's instincts told her something was coming, though she could not say what. Her hand rested on the hilt of a small plasma blade, the energy hum vibrating faintly under her fingertips. Even with years of survival experience, she couldn't shake the sense of tension that seemed to press against her chest. Then it happened. The air above the city rippled like water disturbed by a stone. A low hum began to resonate through the ground, vibrating through Mara's bones. She looked up, and her stomach tightened in recognition of something she had hoped never to see again. A massive alien warship, larger than any she had ever seen, descended from the sky. Its surface was dark and smooth, like liquid metal, and strange lights pulsed along its edges as though it breathed. The ship moved with terrifying grace, cutting through the clouds with a silence that made the world seem even smaller beneath it. Mara's mind raced. She had heard stories of the Zalarian Warlord, a being of incredible power and cunning who had conquered entire star systems with little more than fear and intimidation. And now he was here. He had come for Earth. Her eyes scanned the streets for other survivors, but the city was nearly empty. Those who had stayed were hiding, praying the warlord's attention would pass them by. But Mara knew better. He came for humans, and humans would not be able to hide from him forever. The warship landed in the center of the city, sending a shockwave through the crumbling streets that knocked Mara off her feet. She rolled, barely avoiding falling debris, and pressed herself against the wall of a building, watching as a ramp extended from the bottom of the ship. Figures descended, tall, imposing, alien beings whose very presence seemed to bend the light around them. And then, towering above them all, the warlord himself stepped onto the ground. His armor gleamed with a strange, otherworldly luster, and his eyes shone like molten gold. He moved slowly, deliberately, surveying the ruins with a calm authority that made Mara's stomach churn. The humans in hiding could not see him yet, but Mara could feel his presence, the psychic weight of his mind pressing down on her. He spoke not in words but in a voice that seemed to echo inside her skull. "Give me a child," he said, "and I will give you shelter, refuge, and this city will be no more." Mara's heart stopped. She had expected threats before, but nothing like this. The warlord did not just demand obedience. He demanded something unimaginable, a human child in exchange for mere survival, and the city, her city, hung in the balance. She watched as the aliens spread through the streets, marking positions and observing the few humans who dared to peek from their hiding places. Mara's mind raced. How could they comply? How could they possibly hand over a child? Yet defiance seemed just as impossible. One wrong move and the warlord would destroy everything. Mara knew the truth. Fear was the warlord's weapon, but he underestimated the human spirit. Even in despair, humans found ways to resist. Mara stepped out from the shadow, her chest rising with determination. She was small, just one person against a being of unimaginable power, but she had learned that even small humans could shape the course of events if they were clever and brave. She called out to the warlord, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I will negotiate. But know this, humans are not as simple as you think." The warlord turned, his golden eyes locking onto hers. Mara felt the psychic intensity of his gaze, a pressure that threatened to bend her thoughts. He did not speak aloud. Instead, his mind reached into hers, probing, testing, weighing her courage. She struggled against the intrusion, pushing her own thoughts forward like shields. For a moment she feared she would falter, but she held firm. Humans survived by fighting against odds far worse than this. "You come forward willingly," the warlord said, his words now audible, low and resonant, carrying across the empty streets. "Good. You will be the one to bring me the child." Mara nodded slowly. She knew that a direct confrontation was impossible, but negotiation, subtle, careful, clever, might give her a chance to save the child and the city. She had to think fast. Every second counted, and the warlord's patience, while vast, was not infinite. She moved carefully through the streets, keeping to the shadows, observing how the warlord and his forces organized themselves. She noticed patterns, weaknesses, small gaps in their otherwise flawless formation. He relied heavily on fear and psychological control, assuming humans would break under pressure. He had not accounted for the stubbornness, ingenuity, and cooperation that had always defined human survival. Mara found Eli soon after, a small boy no more than 10, with wide, fearful eyes that mirrored the destruction around them. He clutched a ragged blanket, trembling as Mara approached. She knelt, lowering herself to his level. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here. I won't let him take you without a fight. We'll find a way." Eli looked up at her, a mixture of hope and terror in his gaze. He had heard the stories of the warlord, had seen the alien ships hovering above, but he had never imagined facing him so closely. Mara took his hand and guided him through the debris, careful to avoid the patrols of the warlord's forces. She whispered instructions, urging him to stay silent, to trust her. He did, because Mara had no choice but to be his anchor in the storm. As they moved, Mara realized the enormity of what they faced. The warlord's reach extended far beyond what she could see. His psychic presence hovered in every corner, testing every thought, every plan. Yet she also realized something vital. He underestimated them. He expected fear, but he did not expect courage. He expected submission, but he did not expect strategy. Humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability could be a weapon if wielded correctly. Mara led Eli to the remains of a subway tunnel, a dark, narrow passage that offered some protection from the warlord's gaze. They paused, catching their breath, and Mara began to plan. She knew that they could not confront the warlord directly. They were too few, too weak. But they could observe, gather intelligence, and wait for a moment to strike, a crack in his armor of fear. The boy looked up at her. "Are we safe?" he asked, his voice small and trembling. Mara smiled faintly, though her heart was heavy. "For now," she said. "But we'll be safer if we think carefully. You trust me, right?" Eli nodded. Mara felt a spark of determination ignite within her. This child, this small human, was a symbol of everything the warlord could not understand. Humanity's strength was not in their technology, not in their numbers, but in their ability to adapt, to hope, to fight even when the odds seemed impossible. As they huddled in the dark subway tunnel, Mara's mind worked furiously. She needed a plan, something clever, something unexpected. The warlord relied on fear, but humans had survived far worse. They had faced extinction before and had found a way. Mara would find a way now. She had to. For Eli, for the city, for humanity itself. Outside, the warlord's voice echoed faintly through the ruins, a reminder of the stakes. "Bring me the child, human," he said, almost conversationally, "or all of this will burn." Mara pressed herself against the wall of the tunnel, letting the boy huddle close. She could feel the weight of the world pressing down on them, but she refused to bend. Fear was the warlord's tool, and she would not give it to him. Not now, not ever. Humans had a stubbornness in their nature, a spark that no alien could extinguish. That spark would guide them, and it would survive. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "We will not fail, not today." and as the shadows deepened around them and the hum of the alien warship echoed through the streets, Mara, Vin, and Eli began to move. They would survive. They would resist. And in the heart of fear, the human spirit burned brighter than any alien weapon. For the first time in days, Mara allowed herself a small, dangerous hope. The warlord might have the power to crush cities, to bend minds, to demand obedience. But he had not yet faced the full measure of what humans could do when their courage was tested. And Mara intended to show him. The tunnels smelled of damp concrete and rust, but for Mara and Eli, it was a sanctuary compared to the city above. The boy clutched her hand tightly, his small fingers barely strong enough to wrap around hers, yet there was a determination in his grip that surprised her. Mara moved cautiously, scanning every shadow, every corner. Even in the darkness, she could feel the warlord's presence looming, as if the walls themselves were filled with his gaze. "We need to find a place where he can't see us," Mara whispered, keeping her voice low. "Somewhere we can think, plan, and maybe even fight back." Eli nodded, though his wide eyes betrayed the fear he could not hide. He had seen the alien warship descend, had felt the psychic weight of the warlord's mind, and yet in Mara's presence he felt a strange kind of safety. She had survived the fall of cities, the raids, the chaos, and she carried herself with a calm confidence that made him trust her. They moved deeper into the tunnels, following old service corridors that led beneath the ruined city. Mara kept track of their path mentally, knowing that they would have to return or escape if the warlord's forces discovered them. Every few steps, she stopped and listened. The distant hum of the alien warship above vibrated through the earth, a constant reminder of the stakes. Yet beneath the fear, Mara felt a spark of hope. She had faced worse before, and humans always found a way. As they walked, Mara considered the warlord's offer, or rather his command. "Give me a child and I will give you shelter." The words echoed in her mind, heavy with threat. On the surface it seemed simple, obey or die, but she knew better. The warlord was clever, but even clever tyrants had weaknesses. He relied on fear, on predictable behavior. Humans, however, were unpredictable. That was their greatest strength. "I don't understand," Eli said suddenly, his voice trembling. "Why does he want me? What will he do with me?" Mara crouched beside him, resting her hands on his shoulders. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe he wants to test us. Maybe he's curious. But I do know this. He can't take away our courage and he can't take away our brains. Those are the things that make us human. That's how we survive." The boy stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Mara felt a surge of pride. Even in fear, humans found ways to trust one another, to hold on to hope. That trust, that bond, could be stronger than any alien weapon. They reached a section of the tunnels that had been partially collapsed. Mara used the rubble to block the entrance behind them, creating a crude barrier that would slow anyone following. She turned to Eli. "We'll stay here for a little while. I need to watch, observe, and think. The warlord may be powerful, but he is not perfect. Everyone makes mistakes." For hours, Mara watched the city above through small cracks in the tunnels. From this vantage point, she could see the alien patrols moving through the streets, their movements precise, almost mechanical. The humans who had surrendered were herded into temporary shelters, obedient and fearful. But she noticed something that gave her hope. Some humans were watching back. Some were not fully afraid. They were learning, observing, waiting. Mara realized then that the warlord's strength was also his weakness. He assumed compliance, believed fear alone would control them. But humans were not so easily controlled. Humans adapted. Humans fought back in ways that no alien could predict. That knowledge gave her a plan. Night fell over the city, but the alien warship's lights kept the streets illuminated with a strange, cold glow. Mara and Eli ate what little food they had scavenged, sitting in silence. The boy was exhausted, but he refused to sleep. Mara understood. Fear was a constant companion now, but so was survival. And sometimes, survival demanded vigilance. As she rested, Mara's mind worked through scenarios, calculating risks and possibilities. She thought of the patrols, of the warlord himself, and of the humans who still resisted. There had to be a way to save the child, to protect the city, and to show the warlord that humans were not as simple as he assumed. Hours passed, and then movement above caught Mara's attention. A patrol had stopped near the collapsed subway entrance, their alien forms casting long shadows across the rubble. She held her breath as they spoke in their sharp, alien language, unable to understand the words but able to feel the intent. They were searching. They were testing. They were watching. Mara whispered to Eli, "Stay very still. Don't move." The boy pressed himself against the wall, trying to make himself as small as possible. The patrol lingered, their glowing eyes scanning the shadows before moving on. Mara exhaled slowly. This close call reminded her that the warlord's reach was vast, but so was her determination. Every encounter, every observation was information she could use. By morning, Mara had made a decision. They could not remain in the tunnels forever. The warlord's forces were too strong and his patience too long. They needed allies, humans who had not surrendered, who were still willing to fight, even in secret. Mara had heard rumors of groups that had survived in the outskirts of the city, small bands of humans who refused to be controlled. If they could reach them, they might gain strength, knowledge, and numbers. Packing their limited supplies, Mara and Eli began the careful ascent back toward the surface. They moved silently, avoiding patrols and debris, relying on instinct and observation. When they finally emerged into the ruins of the city, the alien warship loomed above them, its presence oppressive and commanding. Mara felt the psychic pressure again, but she pushed through. Humans had faced fear before, and fear alone would not defeat them. As they moved through the streets, they encountered their first survivors, a small group of humans huddled in the ruins of a collapsed building. Mara called out softly, identifying herself and offering aid. The humans emerged cautiously, their expressions wary but hopeful. Mara explained their situation quickly. The warlord had demanded a child, and she was seeking a way to resist, to protect the boy and the city. The humans listened, then nodded. They had heard of Mara, of her courage and cleverness in previous raids and survival missions. Now they would follow her lead. The spark of unity, fragile but alive, began to form. Mara realized that this was the key. The warlord underestimated humans not because they were weak, but because they were unpredictable, capable of cooperation and creativity even under extreme pressure. By gathering those who still resisted, they could begin to turn fear into strategy. They could begin to fight back. As the group moved cautiously through the streets, Mara kept her mind alert for any sign of the warlord or his forces. Every shadow could hide a patrol, every movement could signal detection. Yet despite the danger, she felt a growing sense of purpose. Humans survived because they adapted, because they did not surrender to fear, because they believed in one another even when hope seemed distant. That night they found temporary shelter in the remains of a reinforced building. The group huddled together, sharing stories of survival and loss, drawing strength from each other. Mara sat with Eli nearby, explaining in simple terms what needed to be done. "We will not let him take you," she said. "We will find a way to resist. Fear is his tool, but it is not stronger than courage, not stronger than humans." Eli's eyes were wide, but he nodded. For the first time since the warlord had arrived, there was a sense of hope in his gaze. Mara smiled faintly. It was fragile, yes, but it was there. That hope, that spark, was the seed of resistance. As dawn approached, Mara rose and moved to the windows, surveying the city. The alien warship remained, a silent threat above them, and patrols continued their rounds. Yet beneath the fear, Mara saw something else. Small signs of defiance. Humans refusing to be broken, watching, learning, waiting. She realized then that the warlord's greatest mistake was not underestimating human strength, but underestimating human spirit. He believed that fear alone would command obedience, but he had not accounted for courage, for ingenuity, for the bonds that humans formed under pressure. Those bonds, she knew, could be stronger than any weapon. Mara turned back to the group, her mind already planning their next move. They would observe, learn, and wait for the moment to act. The warlord might have power, but humans had something he could not control: unpredictability. And unpredictability in the hands of the brave could turn the tide of even the darkest hour. She knelt beside Eli, taking his hand once more. "We will not let him win," she said firmly. "We are humans, we survive, we fight, and we never give up." The boy squeezed her hand, a small but firm gesture, and Mara felt a surge of determination. The path ahead would be dangerous, filled with risk and uncertainty, but they would not face it alone. Humans had a way of finding strength even in despair, and Mara intended to prove it to the warlord. Above them, the alien warship remained, an ever-present reminder of the stakes. But below, in the ruins and tunnels, a small spark of resistance had been lit. And sparks, when nurtured, could grow into a fire that no tyrant could extinguish. Mara knew this was only the beginning. The warlord had made his demand, but humans had made their choice. They would resist. They would fight. And in that fight, they would show that even the most powerful alien could never fully understand the strength of the human spirit. The morning sunlight barely penetrated the thick smoke and dust that hung over New Chicago, casting the city in shades of gray and gold. Mara then moved cautiously along the ruined streets, Eli clinging to her side. Their small group of survivors followed closely behind, their faces a mix of fear and determination. They had managed to survive the warlord's initial occupation, but now came the harder task: resisting, striking back, and proving that humans were not mere subjects to alien control. Mara scanned the horizon. The alien warship still hovered overhead, massive and silent, a shadow of power that seemed to make the very ground tremble. Its presence was oppressive, but she refused to let it intimidate her. She had survived worse than fear. She had survived loss, chaos, and endless uncertainty. Humans had a way of turning the impossible into a challenge, and she intended to make that work in their favor. Their plan for the day was simple but dangerous. Mara intended to observe the warlord's forces, study their patrols, and discover weaknesses that could be exploited. The group would move through alleys, broken streets, and collapsed buildings, avoiding direct contact whenever possible. It was a delicate balance. Move too boldly, and they would be detected. Move too cautiously, and they would miss opportunities. Mara had learned that survival was as much about timing as it was about courage. As they moved, Eli kept close to her side, his small hand gripping hers tightly. He had begun to understand the gravity of their situation, though he still could not fully comprehend the scale of the alien threat. Mara spoke to him quietly, explaining each action, each pause, each calculated decision. "Watch," she whispered. "Notice everything, every shadow, every movement. The more we understand them, the safer we will be." Hours passed with careful observation. The humans moved silently, using their small size and knowledge of the city's ruins to remain unseen. Mara noted the patterns in the aliens' patrols, the rhythm of their steps, the slight gaps when one would look elsewhere, the way the warlord's personal attention seemed to focus on specific streets. Each observation added pieces to a larger picture, a strategy that Mara hoped could eventually turn the odds in their favor. During a pause in an abandoned office building, Mara gathered the group. She drew crude maps in the dust on the floor, showing patrol routes, possible escape paths, and locations that might serve as temporary hideouts. Her confidence inspired the others. For the first time since the warlord's arrival, these humans began to feel a glimmer of hope. Even in the shadow of a tyrant, strategy could be as powerful as fear. Eli looked at the maps, his eyes wide. "Do you think we can actually fight him?" he asked. Mara crouched beside him, meeting his gaze. "Not yet," she said. "First we learn, then we wait, but we will fight. Humans always fight when it matters most." By mid-afternoon, Mara decided it was time to take a risk. They would attempt to disrupt one of the Warlord's patrols, not with weapons, there were too few, but with misdirection. She had noticed that the aliens reacted quickly to unexpected movement, their minds almost automatically predicting patterns. If the humans could create false signals, they might force the aliens to overreact, leaving small openings for future actions. The group split into small teams, each assigned to a specific task. Mara and Eli led one, carefully creating noise in one alley while remaining hidden in another. The sounds of shifting debris echoed through the streets, drawing the patrol's attention. Alien soldiers moved quickly, their glowing eyes scanning for intruders. But the humans were already gone, moving silently through a parallel path that Mara had chosen. The plan worked perfectly. The patrols were confused, their formation disrupted. For the first time, Mara felt the thrill of victory in a small measure, not a defeat of the Warlord, but a demonstration that humans could act with cunning and precision, even under threat. The group regrouped in a partially collapsed building, hearts pounding but spirits high. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Mara gathered the humans once more. "Today we tested them," she said. "We did not fight with weapons but with our minds. The Warlord thinks fear is enough, but he has not counted on us. He has not counted on our courage, our strategy, our ability to adapt. That is the first step. We survive today because we understand him better than he understands us." The humans nodded, a silent agreement passing among them. They had begun to see themselves not just as victims, but as participants in a larger game, a battle of wits and endurance. Even the youngest among them, Eli, understood that their survival depended on cleverness as much as courage. Night fell and the group moved to a safer location, a basement of a building that had survived the initial devastation. Mara kept watch while the others rested, Eli curled beside her, exhausted but calm. The city above was quiet, but Mara knew the Warlord's presence remained, unseen but pressing, a constant reminder of the danger. Hours later, Mara noticed subtle movements above, flickers of light that indicated the aliens were still active. Patrols moved quietly, examining buildings, checking streets. The Warlord himself had not appeared, but Mara felt his mind probing, sensing, testing. She understood then that he was aware of their small acts of defiance. That knowledge was dangerous, but also valuable. The more he reacted, the more predictable he became in other ways. Mara decided to act again the next day. She planned to send small teams into areas the aliens assumed were safe, testing response times, reactions, and communication among their forces. Each action was a small risk, but each provided critical information. Humans had always survived by understanding the environment and turning it to their advantage. Now, she intended to use that principle against the Warlord. Before dawn, Mara spoke with the group quietly. "We move again today," she said. "We will test them, we will observe, and we will learn. Fear is strong, but knowledge is stronger. The Warlord may think he controls us, but he does not. Not yet. And one day he will see that human courage cannot be crushed." Eli looked at her, eyes bright despite the fear. "Do you think he will come after us?" he asked. Mara smiled, a faint, determined smile. "Yes," she said. "He will, but that is good. That means we are seen. That means we matter. And when he comes, we will be ready." The group moved through the city with renewed purpose, each step deliberate and careful. Mara led them through streets she had memorized, paths known only to a few survivors. They avoided the main roads, using collapsed buildings, alleys, and hidden passages. Every movement was a lesson, every shadow a teacher. The humans were learning, growing more confident, more aware. By midday, Mara observed the Warlord's forces respond to the minor disruptions the previous day. Alien patrols had tightened their formation, communication was faster, and a visible tension had appeared among them. The humans watched from hiding spots, noting reactions, memorizing patterns, understanding the ways the aliens adapted. Mara's mind raced with possibilities. If the Warlord relied on fear and psychological control, then small, unpredictable actions could disrupt him. If humans acted together, coordinated but silent, they could force mistakes. Every human in the group had a role to play, and Mara intended to exploit the Warlord's arrogance. That evening, Mara led the group to a high vantage point, a partially collapsed building overlooking a major intersection. They could see the alien patrols moving below, the glow of their eyes cutting through the dim light. Mara pointed out small details, teaching the humans what to watch for, how to predict movements, and when to stay still. "Observe," she said. "Not just with your eyes, but with your mind. Every pattern has a weakness, and every weakness can be used." As night deepened, Mara reflected on the day's events. Humans had survived countless catastrophes, and yet they had always adapted, always resisted. The Warlord may have had power, but humans had unpredictability, intelligence, and courage. Those qualities could not be measured, could not be controlled. Mara felt a fierce pride in the group, in the small but growing resistance. She knelt beside Eli, who had been watching quietly. "Do you see?" she whispered. "They are strong, but we are smarter. They have fear, but we have hope. That hope will guide us." The boy nodded slowly, understanding in a way words could not express. Mara felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, but she welcomed it. Leadership, strategy, courage, these were human strengths, and she would use them to protect not only Eli but all the humans who refused to bow to the Warlord. Hours passed in silence, the group resting yet alert. Mara kept watch, her eyes never leaving the streets below. She knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, but she also knew that humans were not easily defeated. Small victories mattered, knowledge mattered, and courage mattered most of all. As the first light of dawn crept over the city, Mara stood and addressed the group. "Today we learned," she said. "Tomorrow we act. The Warlord will test us, but he will not break us. We are humans. We survive, we fight, and we never give up." Eli squeezed her hand, and for a moment Mara allowed herself a quiet smile. The battle was only beginning, but humans had already made their first move. They were not powerless, they were not defeated, and they were not alone. The Warlord might have thought he controlled everything, but Mara knew better. Humans had the spark of defiance, the spark of strategy, and the spark of courage. And those sparks, when combined, could ignite a fire no alien could extinguish. The city lay under a heavy sky, gray and oppressive, but beneath it, something new had begun to stir. Mara then moved through the ruins with a purpose, Eli at her side, and a small group of survivors following. The humans had learned to observe, to hide, and to test the Warlord's forces, but now they faced a critical moment. Today was not just about survival. It was about showing the Warlord that humans could resist, that courage and strategy could challenge even the strongest alien power. Mara had planned this day carefully. The goal was simple in theory but dangerous in execution. Draw the Warlord's patrols into confusion, expose a weakness, and force him to reveal himself, all while keeping Eli and the rest of the humans safe. It was risky, but every step so far had taught Mara that careful planning and unpredictability were stronger than fear. The group moved silently through the streets, using debris and ruined buildings as cover. Mara's eyes scanned every shadow, every corner. Alien patrols moved below in predictable patterns, their glowing eyes sweeping the streets, but Mara had noted small delays, slight hesitations that suggested cracks in their coordination. She whispered instructions to the humans with her, guiding them in subtle ways, teaching them how to move, when to freeze, and how to communicate without words. Eli kept close to her, small hands gripping hers tightly. He was beginning to understand the rhythm of the city under occupation, the tension in the air, and the subtle signs of danger. Mara had to be careful. The boy was brave, but he was still a child, and the warlord's demand hung over them like a dark cloud. Protecting him was her first priority, but she also knew he represented more than just himself. He symbolized hope, the human spirit that refused to bow. As the group reached a central plaza, Mara paused. The alien warship loomed above, casting its shadow over the crumbling buildings. A patrol of soldiers moved below, checking buildings systematically. Mara signaled to the others, and they split into smaller groups, each assigned a diversionary task. One team would create noise in a distant alley, another would move through the buildings to force patrols into reactive patterns. Mara and Eli would act as observers, ready to move where needed. The plan began with careful precision. Mara watched as the diversionary teams triggered small explosions of debris and noise, sending the alien patrols into action. The soldiers moved quickly, their glowing eyes scanning for intruders, their formation disrupted. Mara noted their reactions carefully, recording each hesitation, each overreaction. The humans were learning how to manipulate the aliens' fear, how to exploit their rigid patterns. Suddenly, a patrol turned unexpectedly toward Mara's hiding spot. She pressed herself against the wall, her breath held as the glowing eyes swept over the rubble. The soldiers hesitated for a moment, then moved on, unaware of her presence. She exhaled slowly, her heart pounding. Every close call was a lesson, every moment of tension a chance to sharpen their strategy. Hours passed as the group moved through the city, constantly observing and adjusting. Mara directed the humans like a chess player moving pieces, always thinking several steps ahead. Each small disruption, each act of misdirection, forced the alien patrols to respond, revealing more of their tactics and limitations. The warlord himself had not appeared yet, but Mara knew he was aware of the humans' resistance. His patience was vast, but she could see that even he could be challenged by clever strategy. By mid-afternoon, Mara decided it was time to escalate. She had identified a weak point in the warlord's patrol coordination, a narrow street where sensors overlapped but left small blind spots. If they could lure a patrol into that street, they could trap them temporarily, not to kill, but to force the aliens to reveal more about their technology and communication. The humans moved into position, following Mara's careful instructions. Eli stayed close, his eyes wide but alert. Mara whispered encouragements, reminding everyone to stay silent, to move deliberately, and to trust the plan. The patrol approached, moving into the trap as intended. The humans triggered small obstacles, forcing the aliens to adjust, stumble, and react. Mara watched closely, recording every detail. Then it happened. One of the patrols made a miscalculation, sending a signal to the warship above. The lights of the ship shifted, a low hum vibrating through the streets. Mara realized that the warlord himself was aware now, responding to the humans' actions. This was the moment she had hoped for. The warlord would reveal something, even just a small crack in his attention, that they could use to their advantage. The humans regrouped in a nearby building, hearts pounding but spirits high. Mara addressed them, her voice firm and calm. "We have forced him to react. That means we are seen. That means he is aware of our strategy. That is progress. We are learning, and we are teaching him that humans cannot be controlled with fear alone." Eli looked at her, eyes bright with understanding. "Do you think he'll come after us?" he asked. Mara nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, "but that is exactly what we want. When he comes, we will be ready. We will show him that courage and strategy are stronger than intimidation." The rest of the day was spent in careful observation, monitoring patrols and adjusting plans. Mara noted that the warlord's responses were becoming less predictable, more reactive. He was powerful, yes, but not perfect, and in every imperfection lay an opportunity. As night fell, Mara led the group to a vantage point overlooking the city center. The warship hovered silently above, its presence oppressive, but Mara's determination burned brighter. She had studied the warlord's movements, learned the patterns of his patrols, and observed the reactions of his soldiers. Knowledge, she realized, was their greatest weapon. The humans huddled in the shadows, watching, listening, learning. Mara pointed out subtle changes in patrol routes, minor delays, and reactions that revealed fear or confusion. "Every detail matters," she whispered. "Every observation is a step toward survival, toward resistance. The warlord may have power, but humans have intelligence, courage, and adaptability. That is something he cannot predict or control." Eli leaned against her, exhausted but alert. "Do you think we can actually beat him?" he asked softly. Mara smiled, though her expression was serious. "Not yet," she said, "but we can show him that humans are not easily broken. Every time we act, we teach him that fear is not enough. One day that lesson will matter, and when it does, humans will be ready." Suddenly, movement below caught Mara's attention. A small patrol was approaching, moving faster than usual. She signaled to the group and they slipped into a side alley, remaining unseen. The patrol paused, scanning the street before moving on. Mara noted the timing, the coordination, and the gaps in their sensors. Another piece of the puzzle. The night continued with tense observation. Mara and the humans stayed hidden, recording every detail, learning every weakness, and refining their strategy. Each moment of danger was also a moment of education, a way to turn fear into power. Humans had survived countless catastrophes, she reminded herself, and they would survive this one as well. By dawn, Mara gathered the group for a quiet meeting. "We have learned much in the past 2 days," she said. "We know his patterns, his reactions, and his weaknesses. We know that fear alone does not control humans, and we know that we have each other. Courage, intelligence, and unity, those are our weapons. The warlord may have strength, but we have strategy, and that is what will make the difference." The humans nodded, a sense of purpose uniting them. Even Eli, small and young, understood that they were no longer just surviving, they were resisting. And resistance, no matter how small, was a powerful statement. Mara's mind turned toward the next step. They would need to act again, but more boldly. Small disruptions had taught them valuable lessons, but now they needed to test the warlord directly, force him into a response that could be observed and exploited. The risks were high, but the potential gains were greater. As the sun rose over the city, Mara felt a surge of determination. Humans had survived worse than this. They had resisted invaders, tyrants, and disasters far beyond what the warlord could imagine. And now they would show him that even the most powerful alien could not fully control the human spirit. She knelt beside Eli, taking his hand gently. "We are ready," she whispered, "and one day soon we will show him what humans are truly capable of." The boy squeezed her hand, a small but firm gesture of trust. Mara felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, but she welcomed it. The path ahead was dangerous, filled with uncertainty, but humans had a way of finding strength even in despair. Courage, strategy, and unity would guide them, and one day the warlord would learn the full measure of human resistance. Above them, the alien warship remained, a silent, looming threat. But below, in the shadows of the city, humans had begun to understand their power. They had learned to observe, to adapt, to act, and in those lessons, Mara knew, lay the key to survival and to victory. The battle was not yet won. The warlord was still strong, still commanding, still a threat. But for the first time, Mara felt a deep, unshakable certainty. Humans could resist, humans could fight, and humans could survive. And when the moment came, they would prove it in ways the warlord could not anticipate, could not control and could not ignore. The city was quiet, but Mara knew that stillness was a lie. The Warlord's presence hung over New Chicago like a storm cloud, immense and unyielding. From their hidden vantage points, Mara and the group of survivors watched the alien warship above, its massive form a constant reminder of the power they were challenging. Yet beneath that fear, there was a spark of determination, courage, and unity. Mara felt it in every human around her, in Eli's small but steady grip on her hand, in the quiet confidence that had grown in their ranks over the past days. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The Warlord had begun to respond to their disruptions, showing impatience and even subtle errors in his patrols. Mara had studied him carefully, noting every hesitation, every overreaction. Today, they would push further. They would force him to make a choice, and in that choice lay their chance. Mara gathered the group quietly before dawn, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of the rising sun. "Today," she whispered, "we take the next step. We will not fight him with brute force. We cannot. But we can fight him with intelligence, with courage, and with unity. The Warlord believes he controls fear, but he cannot control us. Every move we make, every choice, will show him that humans are not predictable, not obedient, and not weak." The humans nodded. Even Eli, small and trembling, understood that this day mattered. Mara led them through streets she had memorized, avoiding main roads and known patrols. Every step was calculated, every pause deliberate. They moved like shadows, silent and careful, each human alert to the movements of others. The Warlord's forces were everywhere, yet Mara had taught them to see patterns, to find gaps, to predict reactions. They reached the central plaza where they had first tested the patrols. Mara paused, scanning the ruined streets. The alien soldiers moved with precision, but today something had changed. Their movements were slightly off, hesitant. Mara's small acts of defiance had forced reactions, and the Warlord himself had taken notice. That hesitation was all she needed. "Split into teams," Mara whispered. "We create distractions, force them to respond, and observe carefully. Do not engage directly. Move only as planned." The humans followed, moving like pieces on a chessboard. One team triggered minor collapses in buildings, sending debris crashing into streets and alleys. Another team made noise from distant corners, causing patrols to investigate. Mara and Eli stayed in position, watching the reactions, noting every detail. The plan worked. The patrols became confused, splitting and overlapping, while Mara noted the timing of each movement. Every hesitation, every overreaction revealed a pattern, a weakness. The Warlord's power was immense, but it was not absolute, and as the humans observed, they grew bolder. Suddenly, the warship above shifted. Lights flashed and a low hum reverberated through the city. Mara's heart tightened. The Warlord had sensed the activity. He was aware, and soon he would act personally. This was the moment she had anticipated, the confrontation that could either break them or define them. She signaled to the group to remain calm and hold their positions. The ground trembled slightly as the Warlord descended, stepping onto the plaza with his massive, imposing form. His golden eyes swept across the humans, and Mara felt the psychic pressure of his presence, probing, testing, weighing their courage. "Humans," his voice echoed, deep and resonant. "You act boldly. You disrupt my orders, yet you have no strength to oppose me. Tell me, why do you resist?" Mara stepped forward, holding her ground. Eli stayed close, his small hand in hers. "We resist because we can," she said steadily. "Because we survive, because fear does not control humans. We are not predictable, we are not obedient, and we are not weak." The Warlord paused, his eyes narrowing. He had expected fear, submission, hesitation, but not courage, not defiance. Mara could sense a flicker of uncertainty, a small crack in the armor of his confidence. She pressed forward, her voice firm. "You may have power, but humans have courage, strategy, and unity. You cannot predict us and you cannot control us fully. We adapt, we endure, and one day we will show you that humans are unstoppable when we fight together." For a moment, the warlord said nothing. The humans held their ground, tense but resolute. Even Eli, trembling but determined, looked up at Mara with trust and belief. And in that silence, Mara realized that this was the turning point. The warlord raised a hand as if to strike or command, but the humans remained still, their movements deliberate, confident. Mara signaled subtly to the teams in surrounding buildings. They triggered small distractions simultaneously: debris, noise, flashes of light. The warlord's soldiers responded automatically, moving to investigate, their formation breaking down. The warlord's eyes widened slightly. He had not expected this level of coordination, this unpredictability. Mara seized the moment. She moved forward, signaling to the others to converge on the plaza's central paths. The humans moved with precision, forcing the alien forces to scatter and overreact. Each action was designed not to harm, but to demonstrate control, intelligence, and courage. The warlord's psychic presence surged, attempting to dominate their minds, but Mara had taught them to resist, to focus, to use unpredictability as a shield. Humans were small, yes, but they were clever. They had learned to act together to exploit patterns to force reactions, and now that training bore fruit. The warlord took a step forward, his voice sharp. "Enough! You will obey or all will be destroyed." Mara did not flinch. "We will not obey your threats," she said clearly. "You can try to control us, but you will never control our spirit. You have strength, but we have courage. You have power, but we have strategy. And you cannot defeat what you cannot predict." For a long moment, the plaza was silent except for the hum of the warship above. Then, Mara noticed something crucial. The warlord's soldiers were hesitating, unsure, responding more slowly, faltering in their formation. The humans had forced a crack in the alien command structure, a glimpse of vulnerability. Mara felt a surge of determination. This was the opportunity she had been preparing for. "Now," she whispered, signaling the group. The humans moved in coordinated, careful actions. They did not strike with weapons. They did not need to. Every movement, every distraction, every minor misdirection forced the warlord's soldiers to react, overcompensate, and reveal more about their positions. The warlord's patience began to waver, his attention divided. Mara could sense it in the subtle shifts of his psychic presence. Eli watched her, eyes wide but steady. Mara squeezed his hand gently. "Stay close," she whispered. "Watch, learn, and trust. Humans survive by thinking, by acting together, by never giving up." Hours passed in tense observation and calculated action. Slowly, the warlord's position became clear. He was powerful, but every reaction he made left a trace of vulnerability. Mara and the humans had forced him to respond, to reveal his patterns, and to overextend. And in that overextension lay their advantage. Finally, as the sun began to rise, Mara made the decision. They would force the warlord to retreat, not through direct combat, but through the demonstration of human resilience and intelligence. Small, coordinated actions across the city created confusion and hesitation among the alien forces. Patrols moved incorrectly, sensors misread the streets, and for the first time the humans saw the warlord hesitate openly. Mara stepped forward, holding Eli close. "You cannot control us completely," she said. "We are humans, we survive, we fight, and we never give up." The warlord's eyes narrowed, then shifted as he perceived the coordination and unity of the humans around him. He realized that despite his overwhelming power, humans had something he could not dominate: intelligence, courage, and the ability to act unpredictably as a group. Mara's strategy, their resistance, their courage, it was all a demonstration of the human spirit. The warlord stepped back, a subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement of defeat. He turned to his warship, issuing commands that indicated withdrawal. The humans watched in disbelief, and awe as the massive ship lifted from the plaza and began to leave, a reminder that their courage had forced the retreat of a being they had thought unstoppable. Mara exhaled slowly, holding Eli tightly. Around her, the humans began to cheer quietly, smiles spreading across faces marked by fear but now alight with pride. They had survived, yes, but more importantly, they had resisted. They had shown that humans could endure, adapt, and fight even when the odds seemed insurmountable. For Mara, the lesson was clear. Humans might be small, fragile, and limited in technology compared to the Warlord, but they possessed qualities no alien could fully control: courage, intelligence, unity, and hope. Those qualities had carried them through every danger, every catastrophe, every moment of fear. And they would continue to carry them long after the Warlord had gone. Eli looked up at Mara, his eyes bright. "We did it," he whispered. Mara smiled, gently ruffling his hair. "Yes," she said, "we did. But remember this, humans survive not just because of luck, but because we think, we plan, we act together, and we never give up. That is what makes us unstoppable." As the sun rose higher, casting light across the ruined city, Mara allowed herself a moment of reflection. The Warlord had come with demands, with threats, with overwhelming power, yet humans had endured. They had resisted. They had turned fear into strategy, chaos into opportunity, and threat into courage. And now, for the first time in days, Mara felt a deep, unshakable certainty. Humans could survive anything, face anyone, and prevail when they stood together. The Warlord had been powerful, but humans were stronger in ways he could never predict. She held Eli's hand as they looked toward the horizon. The city was damaged, the streets still dangerous, but humans had won something greater than survival. They had won the proof of their resilience, their courage, and their spirit. And that, Mara knew, was a victory no alien could ever take away.